Nice to know. One of the positives I really so I wasn't able to get a guest on the show, unfortunately. But I will plan to go through what I liked about the episode, what I really loved about the first episode. In fact, one of my favorite parts of the first episode was the fact that we start out with Yusaku's story. We start out with introducing Yusaku as we start out with I. We don't really start out with the main protagonist. We start out with the inciting incident that gets the plot rolling. And the thing I really loved about getting the about how it started out was it basically started out I with I kind of running away from with I basically with I saving the cybers by hiding it away, and it starts out from Revolver, whose main goal is to get rid of all the Ignis, and basically to get rid of the Ignis for some reason these AIs, which I really find interesting, because that is going to be something we're going to be dealing with in like the next year or so. As I predict, we will have to be dealing with that in the next year, which kind of reminds me of this episode in particular. One thing that really made this episode work well for me was the fact that it doesn't like really like start out with the main protagonist up until like we see I or something like basically basically telling basically like looking through the cameras looking for like something. We don't really know what that is. One one thing I really loved about how we introduce Yusaku. Now, this is something that I really loved about the introduction of Yusaku is that he's not really like every other protagonist. He doesn't start out in a duel in this episode, and that really made me kind of give that really kind of gave me the slow burn feel to his story, where his story introduce opens up with like him basically doing his three things routine, which was basically like him listing out three reasons why Naoki is not like as A tier as Naoki may think he is. I mean, but then he gives three reasons on why Naoki is is a good char- is a good character. I found this scene funny for one reason, and it's basically like the reason of he's basically roasting Naoki in a sense. Like he's roasting him by saying, here are your three flaws. And here are your three things that you like. And Naoki is basically like, what's all this three stuff? Like what's what's with the three thing? And then we shoot back to Yusaku basically going back to the food truck with his partner in crime. Now this also bleeds into my second reason on why I like Yusaku. One being that he's an introvert, two being that he doesn't really start out with like a group of friends, which is a common staple of Yu-Gi-Oh animes. I mean, we had Yugi open up with his 4 other friends. Like, and then we had GX. Jaden starts out with 3 other friends. He is friends with Sho. He is friends with Chumley. Sorry, I screwed that up. But and then we have in 5Ds, he basically gets like 3 other friends, which is basically like we have like 5Ds. Yusei starts out with a group of friends, and and even Yuma to a degree starts out with a group of friends. Yuya starts out with a group of friends in his first episode. Heck, I can even go into the bridge era where we have Yuga starting out with a group of friends, which basically and then we have even Udius. Udius starts out with a group of friends. He starts out with being a very popular guy. But yeah, Yusaku is different. He is different from this whole setup of starting out with a group of friends. He basically starts out with only one person, and we don't even know his relationship with Kusanagi, which we don't even know if he considers Kusanagi a friend at this point. Like, he could basically just be like his right hand man, kind of like how we see Revolver with Spectre, and Spectre basically being Revolver's right hand man. Which is another thing that I found interesting. I loved how Yusaku basically doesn't start out with a group of friends, because it really does show that relatability factor. I mean, how many times have people like started out with a group of friends? Um, how many times do you see people starting out with a group of friends in their journey? I mean, in high school, you're basically like expected to gain your friends throughout high school, and then even in college, you're expected to gain your friends throughout college. Um, which is another thing that I found really nice about Yusaku's story, is that it keeps that whole loner persona of him being a loner, and basically not like having a group of friends. Not that having a group of friends in your first episode is a bad thing. It can also be a good thing, but I love the fact that Yusaku's story took a different twist on that. It basically was like he basically is introverted, and which shows that he is introverted to an extent, and yeah. And then we get to another main driver of the plot. We are introduced to Akira Aizen, and he is. I have a lot of positives about Akira Aizen that I want to get into, and I will get into them in future installments. But Akira Aizen is talking to these chess pieces that are supposed to be like a threat for some reason. Then they also want their hands, like Revolver, on the Ignis. On this AI, this Ignis type thing. This Ignis is basically like the main driver of the plot. And of this episode. Being being that like the Ignis is this AI thing is basically the main driver of the plot. And the plot moves forward because because both sides, both factions, the Knights of Hanoi and Soltech are after the Ignis, and and it would be and it seems like Revolver wants to like get rid of these AIs, because in the beginning we basically see him just basically like seeing like a bunch of these AIs, and he's like, he's like, vanish, Cybers. The Cybers needs to be destroyed. The Ignis needs to be destroyed. So I'm really interested to find out those motivations. I'm trying not to spoil here, but one of the things that I really loved about his journey with one of the things I really loved about this opening with Revolver is it basically demonstrates how much power Revolver has. Like I barely escapes and barely makes it out. He basically only makes it out with only like his eye. I only makes it out with his eye. That's a pun that you could use that, but like he basically only makes it out with his eye, which really shows that Revolver, not a guy you want to mess with in Link Vrains. Also, like I was saying with Akira, I'm really interested to find out how his character's motivation, where his motivation comes from, where he basically, why he basically works for Soul Tech in particular. Why? What's his motivation? Another character we are introduced to in the first episode is Kusanagi, and Kusanagi basically tells Yusaku, and Kusanagi basically tells Yusaku, hey, maybe if you do this, go into Link Vrains, you'll enjoy dueling again, which implies that Yusaku is also different from other Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro tags, where instead of enjoying dueling, he either doesn't like it or is indifferent on it. But I'm thinking it's more the first, where he doesn't like it, and he maybe had a negative experience with dueling in the past. He probably had something really bad happen with dueling, where he was basically like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm quitting. And he basically is like, he basically only sees duel. He probably only sees dueling as a means to his own end. Another thing, or something like, he just shut himself off from dueling, like, entirely, which I find very interesting, given the fact that he is one of those characters who shuts himself off from everything else, and he basically only focuses on dueling for his own purposes. He's not really like a Yuya who is like, I'm gonna make people smile through dueling. He's not really like a Yuma who's like, okay, I'm gonna try this out, see how it goes, and see if I can get better from it. He's not really like a Yugi, a Jaden, or a Yusei for that matter, which is another reason why I like Yusaku, is his reasons, where is basically the mystery in this first episode of why doesn't he like dueling? Why is dueling like why is dueling was his dueling experience negative? Negative in the past? Was it positive? Was which we already covered. It was probably very negative. And one thing that I liked about this episode is it gives us it kickstarts a lot of things. It sets a lot of things in motion with one event. And with like one event being the destruction, the almost destruction of these AIs, these Ignis, these beings that have artificial intelligence in them. They basically are very valuable, considering like the fact that they're basically like these AIs that can think on their own. And they probably have like free will. Like, I basically like that's what I think. They have free will, and that opens up a lot of moral questions. Like, should we be destroying these AIs, or should we try and coexist with them? I don't know what's gonna happen, but I hope this show like helps pull together some of the stuff with the Ignis line, with the AIs. I'm also interested to hear. But yeah, another thing I really wanted to say I like about this episode is they don't start Blue Angel's introduction. And I know she gets saved by Yusaku, by Playmaker, but I feel like it doesn't really like paint her as this damsel in distress who needs like a male protag. Like, I feel like that was more or less like a gesture that he did to help save Blue Angel from being destroyed by Cracking Dragon. And one of the more realistic things I liked about this episode was it basically, like, I love the whole sci-fi element. The science fiction elements where it basically like paints hacking, fire, where it basically like paints the importance of hacking, and the importance of like how of the technology type aspect. I love that. I love the whole aspect I love the whole aspect of the the technology type background, because it's a show about like I love I also like the whole thing they did with the how the firewall was basically like cracked into, and how the Knight of Hanoi basically gets in there and says I'm here to find the Ignis, and he basically just goes in there and like and that kickstarts our first duel of the season, which will basically be Playmaker versus this Knight of Hanoi figure, which I find very interesting that the duel doesn't start in the first episode, but it starts in the next episode. Also, I have also I have a very hot take in my next episode of this podcast. It is a very hot take that I do not think anyone in the Yu-Gi-Oh community will agree with when it comes to this duel that will come up. But yeah. Anywho, I think I'm gonna end it here. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Hopefully anybody who's watching enjoys this stream. We kind of had some hiccups along the way, but I'm gonna work on getting those sorted out. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.